The vast amphitheater of Station Harmony's xenobiology complex hummed with nervous energy as students from dozens of species settled into their bioadaptive seats. The morning light from the nearby binary star system cast an ethereal glow through the transparent aluminum walls, illuminating the diverse gathering of beings who had come to learn about one of the galaxy's most puzzling mysteries, human behavior. Professor Zethkai of the Kepler Prime Academy adjusted his 4 eye stalks nervously, each one focusing on a different section of his audience. His iridescent blue skin flickered with patterns of academic anxiety, a telltale sign among his species when dealing with particularly disturbing subject matter. The flowing robes of his office, adorned with the symbols of the Galactic Xenobiology Consortium, rustled as he moved toward the central podium. Esteemed students, his voice resonated through the Universal Translator Network, each word carefully modulated to convey the gravity of today's lesson. We gather today to examine what may be the most perplexing and terrifying aspect of human psychological development, their deliberate cohabitation with apex predators. A ripple of unease passed through the assembled students. The Vorthen Exchange student in the front row, her crystalline form already shimmering with anticipatory anxiety, raised one of her delicate tentacles. HFY had traveled from the Andromeda Spiral specifically to study the psychological anomalies of various species, but nothing in her extensive education had prepared her for the reports about humans. Professor Zethkai, her voice chimed like distant wind bells. Surely the intelligence reports must be exaggerated? No sentient species would willingly endanger themselves in such a manner. The professor's eye stalks swiveled to focus entirely on her, a gesture that among his people indicated both sympathy and regret. I understand your skepticism, dear HFY. When I first encountered these reports 3 standard cycles ago, I too believed them to be elaborate fabrications or perhaps translation errors in our xenobiology databases. He activated the room's atmospheric controls, dimming the lights to create a more somber mood. However, after extensive research, multiple field observations, and consultations with the human embassy's cultural attaches, I must report that these behaviors are not only accurate but appear to be nearly universal among their species. A young centaurian in the middle section clicked her 6 legs against the floor in distress, a clear sign of agitation among her kind. Professor, what exactly are these companion creatures? Ah, student Velterra. That brings us to today's specific focus. Professor Zethkai's skin patterns shifted to a deeper shade of blue, indicating he was entering full lecture mode. Humans have domesticated, if we can even call it that, numerous predatory species. They share their living spaces with creatures they refer to as pets. Today, we will examine the most psychologically disturbing of these relationships, their bond with the creature they call Felis catus, or simply cats. In the back corner of the amphitheater, Lieutenant Maya Rodriguez of the Human Diplomatic Corps sat with perfect stillness, her hands folded casually in her lap. As the only human in attendance, here officially as a cultural observer, she found the professor's introduction both amusing and enlightening. None of the alien students had noticed the small, warm weight pressed against her thighs beneath the desk, hidden by the flowing fabric of her diplomatic robes. Mr. Whiskers, a compact tabby cat with distinctive orange and white markings, was enjoying one of his frequent naps. His tiny chest rose and fell in peaceful rhythm, occasionally twitching as he dreamed of whatever mysterious things occupied feline minds during sleep. Maya had smuggled him aboard the station in her personal effects cats. After all, were excellent companions for long diplomatic missions, and Mr. Whiskers had proven to be an exceptional judge of character among alien species. Professor Zethkai activated the holographic projection system, and suddenly the amphitheater was filled with a life-sized 3-dimensional image of a common house cat. The assembled students gasped, chittered, and made various species-appropriate sounds of alarm as they found themselves face-to-face with what their professor had described as a living weapon. Observe carefully, Zethkai continued, using a bioluminescent pointer to highlight specific anatomical features. Note the retractable claws, each one a precision instrument capable of delivering wounds that can penetrate most organic materials. The jaw structure evolved over millions of years for crushing the cervical vertebrae of prey animals. The eyes, Those pupils can dilate to absorb maximum light, making them perfect night hunters. A nervous trill came from the Andromedian section as student Kethmore raised a silver-scaled arm. Professor, surely these creatures are kept in containment facilities? Caged for safety. Professor Zethkai's eye stalks drooped in what appeared to be profound sadness. This is where the human behavior becomes truly incomprehensible, dear students. Not only do they refuse to contain these predators, but they actively invite them into their most private and vulnerable spaces. Humans allow these creatures unrestricted access to their sleeping areas, their food preparation zones, and most disturbingly of all, the nurseries where they raise their young. The implications of this revelation sent waves of shock through the diverse audience. Several students appeared to be taking detailed notes, as if documenting the warning signs of a dangerous psychological condition. Maya felt Mr. Whiskers shift slightly in his sleep, making the smallest of contented sounds, a barely audible mrow that she quickly covered by clearing her throat. She maintained her neutral diplomatic expression while inwardly marveling at how thoroughly the professor was misunderstanding every aspect of human-cat relationships. And most terrifying of all, Professor Zethkai concluded his opening remarks. Their hunting instincts remain completely intact. Make no mistake, students. These creatures are not merely dangerous. They are perfectly evolved killing machines, and humans have welcomed them into their hearts and homes. Professor Zethkai manipulated the holographic controls, causing detailed statistical charts to materialize in the air above the amphitheater. The data streams glowed with an ominous red tint, each number more alarming than the last. His 4 eye stalks tracked different sections of the display simultaneously, while his skin patterns shifted to deeper, more disturbed hues. The statistical evidence, my dear students, is nothing short of catastrophic. He began, his voice carrying the weight of profound academic concern. According to the most conservative estimates from the Human Environmental Protection Agency, domestic cats, these supposedly harmless companions, are responsible for the deaths of between 1.3 and 4 billion birds annually on Earth alone. A collective gasp resonated through the amphitheater. The young Kepler student, Plichtho, who had barely completed his first molting cycle and still bore the soft, vulnerable coloring of youth, let out a high-pitched squeak of pure terror. His large, dark eyes dilated to their maximum extent, a fear response that his species had evolved over millennia. Professor? Plichtho's voice cracked with distress. Did you say billion? With a B? They celebrate this mass slaughter. I understand your disbelief, young Plichtho, but the evidence is irrefutable. Professor Zethkai's eye stalks focused on a new section of data, highlighting video recordings that made several students recoil. Observe these documented behaviors. Humans not only tolerate this systematic genocide, but they actively praise their cats for what they term hunting prowess. The holographic display shifted to show home surveillance footage, humans discovering small animal corpses that their cats had deposited on doorsteps, carpets, and even beds. What horrified the alien audience most was the humans' reactions. They spoke in gentle, encouraging tones to their feline companions, often using phrases like, "good kitty," and "what a mighty hunter." They call these offerings presents or gifts. The professor continued, his voice thick with revulsion. The psychological implications are staggering. These predators are training humans to associate death and violence with affection and loyalty. Maya Rodriguez maintained her diplomatic composure while her fingers found the soft spot behind Mr. Whisker's ears. The small tabby responded to her touch with an almost inaudible purr of contentment, the gentle vibration barely perceptible against her leg. The sound was completely masked by the ambient noise of the station's advanced life support systems, but Maya could feel the tiny rumble of happiness against her skin. Student Velterra, the centaurian whose 6 legs had been clicking anxiously against the floor, raised one of her primary appendages. Her species communicated distress through rapid leg movements, and her current rhythm indicated she was approaching panic levels. "Professor Zethkai," she managed, her voice carrying harmonics of deep concern. "Surely the human authorities have established containment protocols? some form of species protection legislation. The professor's response sent waves of horror through the assembled students. Student Velterra, this is perhaps the most incomprehensible aspect of the entire phenomenon. Not only do human governments refuse to regulate these predators, but they have established what they call animal welfare laws, legislation specifically designed to protect the cats and ensure their continued well-being. The holographic display shifted again, showing images of veterinary clinics, pet supply stores, and cat sanctuaries. To the alien observers, these appeared to be facilities dedicated to maintaining and supporting an army of biological weapons. They have created an entire economic infrastructure around these creatures. Zethkai continued, his academic objectivity warring with obvious disgust. Specialized medical facilities staffed by trained professionals whose sole purpose is to keep cats healthy and strong. Commercial establishments that sell food, toys, and comfort items exclusively for feline predators. They even have dedicated breeding facilities to ensure a steady supply of new cats. Kyxilla, the Vorthan student, had shifted her crystalline form to a sickly green coloration, a clear indicator of nausea among her species. Professor, this sounds less like domestication and more like willing servitude. Your observation is astute, student Kyxilla. The humans have created what can only be described as a service economy centered entirely around the comfort and satisfaction of their feline overlords. The Andromedian student, Kethmore, leaned forward with obvious alarm. His silver-scaled skin had taken on a darker hue, and the bioluminescent patches along his neck were flashing in rapid, distressed patterns. Professor, you mentioned social media documentation. Are you suggesting that humans publicly celebrate these massacres? Indeed I am. The holographic display filled with images from various human social media platforms, thousands upon thousands of photographs showing cats with their prey, accompanied by captions that the translation matrix rendered as expressions of pride and affection. They create permanent digital records of their cats' killing achievements and share them with their social networks for approval and praise. They even assign what they call hashtags to categorize different types of kills. The professor added with obvious revulsion. Terms like mighty hunter, proud owner, and natural instincts are commonly associated with images of fresh carnage. The evidence was overwhelming, and the alien students sat in stunned silence, trying to process the implications of a species that not only tolerated but actively celebrated living with such efficient predators. Maya felt Mr. Whiskers stretch contentedly in his sleep, his tiny paws flexing against her leg. She bit back a smile, knowing that if these students could see her fearsome predator, in his current state, dreaming peacefully with his little pink tongue slightly visible, their entire worldview might shift dramatically. Professor Zethkai's eye stalks focused with laser precision on the holographic controls, his skin patterns shifting to deep purple, a coloration that among his species indicated they were about to present particularly disturbing evidence. The amphitheater's lighting dimmed further as he prepared to unveil what he considered the most terrifying aspect of feline behavior. Now, esteemed students, we delve into the psychological warfare that these creatures wage upon their environment, he announced, his voice carrying the gravitas of a war correspondent reporting from a battlefield. What you are about to witness are actual, unedited recordings of Felis catus hunting behaviors, obtained through extensive surveillance operations conducted by the Galactic Zoological Survey. The first holographic sequence materialized in stunning three-dimensional detail. A sleek black cat moved through tall grass with fluid, predatory grace. Every muscle fiber was visible beneath its coat, coiled and ready for explosive action. The creature's pupils had dilated to enormous black pools that seemed to absorb all available light, transforming its eyes into portals of pure hunting instinct. Several students immediately recoiled. The Vorthan exchange student, Kyxilla, began emitting a high-frequency harmonic of distress that caused her crystalline form to vibrate visibly. Student Plick, though, the young Kepler, pressed himself so far back into his bioadaptive seat that it automatically adjusted to prevent him from falling. Observe the biomechanical perfection, Professor Zethkai continued, using his bioluminescent pointer to highlight specific aspects of the cat's movement. Notice how the creature distributes its weight across specialized paw structures designed for absolute silence. Each step is calculated with mathematical precision. The tail acts as a counterbalance, allowing for instantaneous directional changes that would be impossible for most sentient species. The hologram showed the cat's body lowering into what the professor termed attack configuration. Spine curved, hindquarters elevated, every sense focused on an unseen target. The creature's ears rotated independently, creating a sophisticated acoustic detection system that could pinpoint prey locations with terrifying accuracy. The sensory apparatus is beyond anything our military engineers have achieved, Zethkai explained, his academic objectivity barely containing his obvious horror. Those whiskers you see? They're actually highly sensitive tactile sensors that can detect air pressure changes caused by the movement of small animals. The creature essentially feels its prey through atmospheric disturbances. Maya Rodriguez felt Mr. Whiskers shift slightly in his sleep, making the tiniest of contented sounds, a barely perceptible mrrow that spoke of pleasant dreams rather than predatory intent. She quickly cleared her throat to mask the sound, but not before noticing how the gentle vibration of his purring had resumed, creating a soothing counterpoint to the professor's increasingly dramatic presentation. The holographic display transitioned to show the attack sequence. The cat's muscles exploded into motion with such speed that the recording had to be slowed to 1/10 normal speed for the audience to follow the action. What they witnessed was a display of biomechanical engineering that put their most advanced combat systems to shame. Note the precision of the strike. The professor highlighted each phase of the attack. The initial leap generates force equivalent to 20 times the creature's body weight. The claws extend at the exact moment of impact, each one following a predetermined trajectory designed to incapacitate specific anatomical targets. Student Velterra, the Centaurian, began the rapid leg clicking that indicated extreme distress among her species. Professor, this creature moves faster than our defensive systems could track. Your observation is correct, Student Velterra. Conservative estimates suggest that a cat's strike speed exceeds the reaction time of 87% of known sentient species. The next sequence showed a cat's night vision capabilities through specialized imaging equipment. The alien students watched in fascination and horror as the creature navigated complete darkness with ease, its eyes glowing like twin stars in the infrared spectrum. Their ocular modifications allow them to hunt effectively in light conditions that would render most of us completely helpless, Zethkai explained. They possess a tapetum lucidum, a reflective layer behind the retina that essentially amplifies available light by up to 6 times. But the professor's next revelation sent waves of true terror through the audience. The hologram displayed a cat engaged in what humans called play, batting at a small toy mouse with obvious enjoyment, catching and releasing it repeatedly. And here, dear students, we witness the most psychologically disturbing aspect of their hunting behavior. Zethkai's voice dropped to what could only be described as an academic whisper of horror. This is not hunting for sustenance. This is hunting for psychological gratification. The Andromedian student, Kethmore, his silver scales now displaying patterns of acute anxiety, raised a trembling appendage. Professor, are you suggesting these creatures derive pleasure from the act of killing? Student Kethmore, the evidence suggests something far more sinister. They engage in what behavioral specialists term surplus killing, the deliberate hunting and slaying of prey far beyond their nutritional requirements. They appear to hunt simply because they enjoy the act itself. The holographic evidence continued. Cats stalking, pouncing, and toying with various small animals. Each sequence demonstrated not just predatory efficiency, but what appeared to be genuine enjoyment of the hunt. Most disturbing of all, Professor Zethkai concluded, is their practice of catch and release torture. They will capture prey, allow it to believe it has escaped, then recapture it repeatedly. This behavior serves no survival purpose. It appears to be purely recreational violence. Maya felt Mr. Whiskers stretch luxuriously in his sleep, his tiny claws briefly extending in what she knew was simply a normal stretching reflex. To her, it was endearing evidence of his comfort and trust. To the alien observers studying similar movements in the holographic displays, it would appear to be a creature unconsciously practicing killing techniques even while unconscious. The young Kepler student, Plick though, looked ready to evacuate not just the classroom but possibly the entire station. "Professor, how do humans sleep knowing these torture specialists are sharing their living spaces?" Professor Zethkai's skin patterns shifted to an alarming shade of crimson as he prepared to present what he considered the most heartbreaking aspect of his research: the human casualties of feline cohabitation. The holographic display transformed into a detailed medical interface, complete with anatomical diagrams and statistical breakdowns that made several students cover their optical organs in distress. "The tragic reality, dear students, is that humans pay a terrible price for their psychological bondage to these predators," he began, his voice heavy with what could only be interpreted as genuine grief for the victims. "The medical documentation is extensive and deeply disturbing. Charts materialized showing injury statistics compiled from human medical facilities across Earth. The numbers were staggering: hundreds of thousands of documented cases annually of what humans euphemistically called cat-related injuries. According to data obtained from the Human Centers for Disease Control," Zethkai continued, manipulating the display to highlight specific categories, "domestic cats inflict approximately 400,000 bite wounds on humans each year. Each bite delivers a cocktail of potentially lethal bacteria directly into the victim's bloodstream." Student Plick though, the young Kepler whose molting scars still showed his recent transition to adulthood, made a sound that his translator rendered as a whimper of pure terror. "Professor, why don't the humans seek medical intervention to break free from these creatures?" "Ah, young Plick though, this brings us to the most insidious aspect of feline psychological manipulation," the professor replied, his eye stalks focusing intently on a new set of data. "The creatures have developed what human medical professionals term toxoplasmosis, a parasitic infection that literally alters human brain chemistry." The holographic display showed microscopic organisms infiltrating neural tissue, accompanied by brain scan comparisons between infected and uninfected humans. The differences were clearly visible even to non-medical students. This parasite, transmitted through feline waste products, affects the human amygdala, the brain region responsible for fear responses and risk assessment. Infected humans demonstrate measurably reduced fear reactions when exposed to dangerous situations. Maya Rodriguez felt Mr. Whiskers stretch luxuriously in his sleep, his tiny claws briefly extending before retracting, a normal sleep reflex that she found endearing. She gently adjusted her position to ensure his continued comfort while maintaining her diplomatic composure. Kyxilla, the Vorthan student, had shifted her crystalline form to a deep purple hue that indicated both fascination and revulsion. "Professor, are you suggesting these creatures are engaging in biological warfare against their hosts?" "The evidence strongly supports that conclusion," student Kyxilla. "But the psychological manipulation extends far beyond parasitic infection." The display shifted to show acoustic analysis of cat vocalizations. Waveform patterns danced across the holographic interface, revealing frequencies and harmonics that the alien students found deeply unsettling. Cats produce a specific vocalization known as purring, a subsonic frequency that resonates between 20 and 50 Hz. This frequency range has been documented to trigger the release of endorphins, serotonin, and dopamine in the human brain, creating artificial states of euphoria and attachment. Student Velterra's 6 legs were now clicking in such rapid succession that they created an almost musical rhythm of distress. "This purring, it's a form of sonic manipulation?" "Precisely. Humans exposed to purring demonstrate measurable changes in heart rate, blood pressure, and stress hormone levels. They report feeling calm, peaceful, and loved, clear indicators of compromised judgment and altered mental states." The professor activated a new holographic sequence showing humans interacting with their cats. To the alien observers, what they witnessed appeared to be clear evidence of psychological subjugation, humans speaking in altered vocal patterns, making nonsensical sounds, and displaying behaviors that seemed completely contrary to normal human social interaction. Observe how the humans modify their vocal patterns when addressing their feline captors, Zethkai pointed out, highlighting specific interactions. They employ what they call baby talk, simplified language patterns typically reserved for their own offspring. This suggests the cats have successfully triggered parental bonding responses. The Andromedian student, Kethmore, whose silver scales were now displaying rapid, anxious color shifts, raised a trembling appendage. Professor, surely their medical professionals have developed treatments for these various forms of manipulation? Professor Zethkai's response sent a chill through the amphitheater. Student Kethmore, this is perhaps the most tragic aspect of the entire phenomenon. Human medical facilities not only refuse to treat cat-induced psychological conditions, but they actively facilitate the continuation of these relationships. New holographic displays showed veterinary clinics, pet supply stores, and what humans called cat cafes. Establishments where individuals could interact with multiple cats simultaneously. They have established an entire medical specialty dedicated to maintaining feline health and extending feline lifespans. These veterinarians receive extensive training in feline anatomy, psychology, and behavior, not to defend against cats, but to better serve them. The evidence continued mounting. Images of humans purchasing elaborate cat furniture, premium cat food, and expensive medical treatments for their feline companions. To the alien observers, it appeared to be clear documentation of a conquered species dedicating resources to their conquerors. Most disturbing of all, the professor continued, humans who lose their cats due to natural causes or accidents typically acquire replacement cats within a matter of months. They claim to feel incomplete or empty without feline presence. The psychological dependency appears to be permanent and irreversible. Maya felt Mr. Whiskers shift again, making the tiniest sound of contentment, a barely audible chirp that spoke of security and trust. She had to suppress a smile as she realized that everything the professor was describing as sinister manipulation was actually the foundation of one of the most beautiful interspecies relationships in the known galaxy. The conditioning is so complete, Professor Zethkai concluded, that humans often claim their cats choose them, rather than acknowledging their own psychological vulnerability to feline influence. They interpret obvious predatory behaviors as signs of affection, and they willingly sacrifice their own comfort, resources, and safety for creatures that provide no measurable benefit in return. Professor Zethkai activated the amphitheater's most advanced holographic projection system, and suddenly the entire space transformed into a three-dimensional timeline stretching back thousands of Earth years. The display pulsed with ominous energy as archaeological data points materialized like stars in a constellation of conquest. What I am about to reveal to you, esteemed students, may fundamentally alter your understanding of interspecies warfare, the professor announced, his 4 eye stalks focusing with laser intensity on different sections of the historical data. His skin patterns had shifted to the darkest purple his species could produce, a coloration reserved for revelations of the most serious magnitude. Archaeological evidence suggests that the initial contact between humans and Felis catus occurred approximately 9,000 Earth years ago in a region humans call the Fertile Crescent. He began, manipulating the timeline to highlight specific excavation sites. However, the crucial detail that transforms this from a simple domestication event into something far more sinister is this. Humans did not seek out cats. Cats deliberately infiltrated human settlements. The holographic display zoomed in on ancient Mesopotamian ruins, showing clear evidence of feline remains found in human food storage areas. Pottery shards bore the unmistakable marks of small claws, and grain storage vessels showed signs of what could only be described as systematic feline occupation. Student Velterra's 6 legs had begun their characteristic distress clicking, creating a rhythmic percussion that echoed through the amphitheater. Professor, are you suggesting this was a planned invasion? The evidence is overwhelming, Student Velterra. Consider the strategic brilliance of their approach. The timeline advanced, showing the spread of feline-human cohabitation across multiple continents. Rather than attempting direct conquest through violence, they employed what military strategists would recognize as a perfect infiltration protocol. The young Kepler student, Plictho, had pressed himself so far back into his bioadaptive seat that it was now configured for maximum defensive positioning. But Professor, How could they coordinate such a complex operation across such vast distances? They're just animals, aren't they? Professor Zethkai's eye stalks swiveled to focus entirely on the trembling student. Student Plick, though, that assumption may be the greatest mistake in xenobiological history. Consider their methodology. They identified human vulnerabilities with surgical precision. The holographic display shifted to show ancient Egyptian artwork, images of cats being worshipped, mummified, and treated as divine beings. The alien students watched in horrified fascination as the evidence of feline psychological manipulation unfolded across millennia. Phase 1. Resource acquisition. The professor continued, highlighting specific archaeological evidence. Cats position themselves near human food storage facilities, initially appearing to provide a service by eliminating rodent pests. This created the illusion of mutual benefit while establishing their physical presence within human settlements. Maya Rodriguez felt Mr. Whiskers adjust his position slightly, settling more comfortably against her warmth. His tiny paws flexed contentedly against her leg, a gesture she recognized as pure trust and affection. She had to bite her lip to prevent herself from smiling at the irony of the professor's dramatic invasion theory, while her own invader was demonstrating nothing more threatening than sleepy contentment. Phase 2. Psychological integration. Zethkai continued, bringing up brain scan comparisons between ancient and modern humans. Within mere centuries, humans began displaying clear signs of behavioral modification. They started creating artistic representations of cats, incorporating feline imagery into their religious practices, and most tellingly, they began selective breeding programs, not to improve cats, but to create varieties that would be more appealing to human preferences. The Vorthan student, Kyxilla, had shifted her crystalline form to a deep amber hue that indicated profound concern. Professor, you're suggesting that cats manipulated humans into engineering them for maximum psychological impact? Precisely, student Kyxilla. Observe the timeline. The display showed the development of different cat breeds over centuries. Humans systematically bred cats to enhance specific traits: larger eyes to trigger parental instincts, softer vocalizations to increase emotional response, and coat patterns designed to appeal to human aesthetic preferences. The cats essentially used humans as biological engineers to perfect their own manipulation capabilities. The Andromedian student, Kethmore, whose silver scales were now displaying rapid, panicked color changes, raised a trembling appendage. Professor, what was Phase 3? Phase 3. Global saturation. The holographic timeline accelerated, showing the explosive spread of cat-human relationships across every continent. By utilizing human transportation networks, cats achieved planetary distribution within a remarkably short time frame. They transformed from a regional phenomenon to a global presence, embedding themselves so deeply into human society that removal became impossible. The statistics were staggering. The display showed current global cat populations. Over 600 million domestic cats living in direct contact with humans, with feral populations numbering in the billions. The ratio was approximately 1 cat for every 12 humans on the planet. The infiltration was so successful, Professor Zethkai continued, that humans now actively facilitate cat expansion. They transport cats to new territories, establish breeding populations on isolated islands, and even carry cats with them during space exploration missions. Student Plick, though, made a sound of pure terror. They're spreading them to other worlds? Indeed, human colonial vessels include provisions for cat transportation and care. They have declared cats to be essential for crew morale, a clear indication that the psychological conditioning has reached such an advanced stage that humans believe they cannot function without feline presence. The professor manipulated the display to show projections of human expansion into space, with corresponding cat population estimates for potential colony worlds. If current trends continue, cats will achieve interplanetary distribution within the next century, potentially reaching other star systems before any other Earth species, except humans themselves. The implications sent waves of horror through the diverse student body. Maya felt Mr. Whiskers begin to purr softly in his sleep, that gentle, rumbling sound that the professor had described as subsonic psychological manipulation, but which she knew was simply the sound of a happy, secure cat dreaming peacefully in the presence of someone he trusted completely. Phase 4, Professor Zethkai concluded ominously, remains to be determined, but given their track record of strategic patience and psychological manipulation, we can only speculate about their ultimate objectives. Professor Zethkai's skin patterns had evolved beyond mere purple into something approaching black, a coloration so rare among his species that several students gasped at the sight. This was the chromatic equivalent of academic despair, reserved for discoveries so profoundly disturbing that they challenged the very foundations of xenobiological understanding. What I am about to reveal, dear students, represents the absolute pinnacle of feline psychological manipulation, he announced, his voice carrying the weight of someone about to deliver news of galactic significance. The evidence suggests that cats have achieved something no other species in recorded history has accomplished: complete cultural integration with their host species. The holographic display transformed into a vast three-dimensional matrix showing human cultural artifacts spanning millennia. Ancient Egyptian temples materialized alongside modern internet data centers, creating a timeline of feline influence that stretched across the entirety of human civilization. Observe the depth of cultural penetration, the professor continued, manipulating the display to highlight specific examples. Ancient Egypt, an entire civilization that worshipped cats as literal deities. The goddess Batet commanded temples, priests, and religious ceremonies dedicated exclusively to feline reverence. Killing a cat was punishable by death, and when cats died, humans would shave their eyebrows in mourning and mummify the feline remains with the same care reserved for their own royalty. Student Velterra's six-legged clicking had reached such intensity that it resembled a percussion symphony of terror. Professor, you're suggesting they achieved religious infiltration? Not infiltration, Student Velterra, complete theological conquest. But this was merely the beginning. The timeline advanced rapidly, showing medieval European manuscripts decorated with feline imagery, Renaissance paintings featuring cats as symbols of mystery and power, and eventually arriving at what the professor termed the modern era of maximum saturation. The technological age has provided cats with their most powerful weapon yet, something humans call the Internet, Zethkai explained, as the holographic display filled with incomprehensible data streams representing billions of digital communications. Conservative estimates suggest that between 15 and 30% of all human Internet traffic consists of cat-related content. The young Kepler student, Plictho, made a sound that his translator could only render as existential terror. 30% of all their communications. Indeed, student Plictho, humans create, share, and consume cat content with obsessive dedication. They have terms like cat videos, cat memes, and cute cat photos that represent entire categories of media consumption. Some individual cat images have been viewed by hundreds of millions of humans. Maya Rodriguez felt Mr. Whiskers shift in his sleep, making the tiniest adjustment to his position that pressed his warm, soft body more firmly against her legs. His whiskers twitched slightly, likely dreaming of something pleasant and cat-like. She found herself marveling at how this small, trusting creature sleeping peacefully in her lap was being portrayed as some kind of master manipulator orchestrating the psychological conquest of humanity. The holographic display showed social media statistics that made the alien students recoil in horror. Billions of cat photos, videos, and stories shared daily across human communication networks. Entire platforms dedicated exclusively to feline content. Professional cat influencers with millions of human followers. They have convinced humans to create permanent digital shrines to feline superiority, Professor Zethkai continued, his academic objectivity cracking under the weight of the evidence. Humans spend countless hours documenting their cat's daily activities, sharing these records with global audiences, and competing to demonstrate whose cat displays the most impressive predatory characteristics. Kyxilla, the Vorthan student, had shifted her crystalline form to a color that didn't exist in her species' normal spectrum. A sickly, impossible hue that indicated psychological overload. Professor, how do they coordinate this level of manipulation across millions of individual cats? This brings us to the most terrifying possibility of all, student KYXilla. The evidence suggests they don't need to coordinate. Each individual cat appears to instinctively understand its role in the larger strategy. The professor activated a new holographic sequence showing cats in various human environments, all displaying remarkably similar behaviors despite having no apparent contact with each other. They position themselves in optimal locations for maximum human attention, produced vocalizations precisely calibrated to trigger human emotional responses, and demonstrated an uncanny ability to appear adorable at moments when humans were most susceptible to psychological influence. Consider this phenomenon humans call cat logic, Zethkai explained, showing recordings of cats sitting in cardboard boxes, sleeping in impossible positions, and staring at seemingly empty spaces with intense focus. To human observers, these behaviors appear random or amusing, but behavioral analysis suggests they may serve specific psychological functions, keeping humans engaged, entertained, and emotionally invested. The Andromedian student, Kethmore, whose silver scales were now cycling through colors so rapidly they created a strobing effect, raised a trembling appendage. Professor, are you suggesting that every cat behavior has strategic purpose? The evidence is compelling, student Kethmore. Even behaviors that appear self-destructive or counterproductive seem designed to elicit specific human responses. When cats knock objects off surfaces, humans typically react with a mixture of frustration and amusement, but they always clean up the mess and rarely take punitive action. The display showed compilation footage of this exact behavior, thousands of cats systematically pushing objects off tables, counters, and shelves while humans watched, recorded the behavior, and shared it as entertainment across their communication networks. They have transformed their most destructive behaviors into content that humans actively celebrate and propagate, the professor observed with what could only be academic horror. The psychological manipulation is so complete that humans interpret obvious acts of territorial dominance and property destruction as charming personality quirks. Maya felt Mr. Whiskers begin to purr softly in his sleep, that gentle, rumbling vibration that she knew indicated nothing more than contentment and security. The irony was almost overwhelming. Here was her master manipulator, a 6-pound ball of fur, who was currently using her lap as his personal heating pad and dreaming whatever peaceful dreams cats dream. But perhaps most disturbing of all, Professor Zethkai concluded, is their infiltration of human language itself. Humans have developed an entire vocabulary dedicated to describing cat behaviors. Purring, meowing, kneading, bunting, chattering, and dozens of other terms that exist solely to interpret feline communications. The holographic display showed linguistic analysis demonstrating how human languages had evolved to include cat-specific terminology, with some estimates suggesting that the average human knew more words for describing cat behaviors than for describing the behaviors of their own species' infants. They have succeeded in making themselves not just physically present in human environments, but linguistically and culturally indispensable. Humans can no longer conceptualize their own society without acknowledging the central role of cats. Professor Zethkai was building toward what he considered the most crucial warning in xenobiological education when Mr. Whiskers, having grown increasingly restless from all the academic discussion about his species' supposed world domination plans, decided he'd had quite enough of hiding beneath desks and diplomatic robes. The small orange tabby stretched magnificently, executed a perfect feline yawn that displayed his tiny fangs, and with the supreme confidence that only cats possess, leaped gracefully onto Maya's desk. He landed with the soft precision of millions of years of evolution, sat down with regal composure, and began the important business of grooming his left paw, completely oblivious to the fact that he had just become the center of attention for 37 terrified alien students. The effect on the classroom was instantaneous and catastrophic. Student Plictho, the young Kepler whose molting scars were still visible, launched himself toward the ceiling with such force that he activated the amphitheater's emergency containment protocols. His high-pitched shriek of "Apex Predator Detected" triggered automatic translation broadcasts in 17 different languages simultaneously. "It's one of them!" cried KYXilla, her crystalline form flashing through every color in the visible spectrum before settling on a brilliant, pulsing red that indicated maximum alarm. The infiltration has reached the station. Student Velterra, the six-legged Centaurian, scrambled backward with such panicked intensity that she became tangled in her own legs, creating a cascade effect that toppled 3 rows of bioadaptive seating. Her distress clicks had escalated to what could only be described as percussive terror. The Andromedian student, Kethmore, made a sound like a malfunctioning warp drive and began transmitting what appeared to be emergency beacon signals through his bioluminescent patches. His silver scales had locked onto a pattern that roughly translated to requesting immediate evacuation. Through all this chaos, Mr. Whiskers continued his grooming routine with the serene indifference that cats have perfected over millennia. He paused briefly to observe the pandemonium he had caused, gave what appeared to be a small shrug, and returned to the important task of ensuring his paw met his species' exacting hygiene standards. Professor Zethkai stood frozen, his 4 eye stalks extended to maximum length and trembling like seismic sensors detecting a planetary catastrophe. His skin had shifted beyond black into colors that didn't technically exist in his species' normal repertoire, a physiological impossibility brought on by the cognitive dissonance of encountering his research subject in person. "Lieutenant Rodriguez," he managed to whisper, his voice barely registering above the chaos. "There is a killer predator sitting directly in front of me." Maya Rodriguez calmly reached over and scratched behind Mr. Whisker's ears, the spot she knew he particularly enjoyed. His response was immediate and devastating to the professor's entire theoretical framework. He began to purr. Loudly, the sound filled the amphitheater like a small, contented engine, drowning out the various alien distress calls. "Class?" Maya announced with a warm smile that somehow made the situation even more terrifying to the alien observers. "I'd like you to meet Mr. Whiskers. He's been here the entire lecture, actually, sleeping peacefully on my lap while you discussed his species' supposed plans for galactic domination." The revelation that they had been in the presence of their subject matter for the entire session sent fresh waves of panic through the student body. Several were now attempting to call for security, while others appeared to be drafting what looked suspiciously like last wills and testaments. Mr. Whiskers, enjoying the attention and the gentle ear-scratching, stretched out one small paw toward the nearest student, the traumatized Vorthan, in what was clearly a friendly gesture of introduction. "Defensive strike incoming," Kewixila screamed, her crystalline form now strobing like an emergency beacon. "It's initiating attack protocols." "Actually," Maya said with a gentle laugh, "he's trying to say hello. This is what we call a friendly paw. In cat body language, it's an invitation to interact." She demonstrated by allowing Mr. Whiskers to place his paw against her palm, a gesture that made half the students faint and the other half seriously consider abandoning their academic careers entirely. "You see, Professor Zethkai," Maya continued, now cradling Mr. Whiskers like the small, harmless creature he actually was. "There's one crucial detail your extensive research somehow missed." Mr. Whiskers chose this moment to demonstrate the ultimate weapon in the feline arsenal. He looked directly at Professor Zethkai and performed the slow blink, that universal cat expression of trust and affection that humans call a cat kiss. The professor made a sound that his translator couldn't process. "Cats aren't our conquerors," Maya explained, gently kissing the top of Mr. Whisker's head, which caused him to purr even more loudly. "They're not psychological manipulators plotting humanity's downfall. They're not mind-controlling parasites using sonic warfare to enslave our species." She held Mr. Whiskers up so the entire class could see him properly. All 6 pounds of orange and white fluff, with his bright green eyes and pink nose, looking for all the world like exactly what he was. Someone's beloved companion. "They're our friends," Maya said simply. "Our chosen family. Our partners in one of the most beautiful interspecies relationships in the known galaxy." Mr. Whiskers, as if understanding the importance of the moment, gave a tiny, conversational mrow that sounded nothing like the war cry the students had been expecting and everything like a polite greeting. "That purring you described as sonic manipulation is the sound of happiness. Those predatory hunting behaviors? Play. Those psychological conditioning techniques? Love." She scratched under Mr. Whisker's chin, and his purring intensified to the point where several sensitive alien hearing organs began vibrating sympathetically. And that, Maya concluded, looking around at the assembly of terrified alien academics, is what makes humans truly dangerous in the galaxy. We don't just survive alongside other species. We love them. We form bonds with creatures that could hurt us, and we trust them completely because we know they love us back. Mr. Whiskers yawned again, curled up in Maya's arms, and closed his eyes for another nap. After all this excitement, he had decided it was definitely time for his third nap of the morning. "I think, Professor," Maya said quietly, as the gentle sound of purring filled the now silent amphitheater, "your curriculum might benefit from a few guest lectures on the actual nature of human-animal relationships." Professor Zethkai stared at the small cat, then at Maya, then back at the cat. Mr. Whiskers opened one green eye, looked directly at him, and gave another slow, trusting blink. The classroom remained suspended in perfect silence, broken only by the sound that had terrorized an entire species of academics. The gentle, loving purr of a cat who had found his perfect napping spot in the arms of someone who understood that the real power of cats had never been conquest. It had always been love. Author's note: this HFY story explores the classic trope of aliens misunderstanding human-animal relationships, particularly with cats. The humor comes from the dramatic irony of aliens describing cats as terrifying predators while a perfectly harmless house cat sleeps peacefully nearby, embodying everything wonderful about the human-pet bond that the aliens completely misinterpret.